Hello everyone, hope you're doing well and staying safe, and whoops, my light's falling, stay. I hope you're enjoying this spring weather if you're experiencing it down where you live or up where you live. But today I'm going to be reviewing one of the thrillers/mystery novels that I was most excited for in 2021, and that is The Project by Courtney Summers. This came out back in February of this year, so one of the few times where I'm like up on a new release. This entire video is going to have zero spoilers, so if you haven't read it yet, feel free to watch the whole thing. But if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you definitely know that I adored Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is I don't know if her books fall into young adult or new adult or somewhere in between, but there's some of the very rare books within that category that are incredibly dark, disturbing, well written. Not insinuating, of course, that books that are young adult and new adult aren't well written by any means, but I do think I'm correct in saying it's hard to find well written thrillers/mystery novels that surround people in their late teens, early 20s. And this book was sent to me for review, but as always, I'm going to be completely honest and talk through all the pros and cons. So let's do a really quick, again, spoiler-free summary before we get into what I thought about the book. So our protagonist is Lo. She is, I want to say, I think 19 years old, and she is an aspiring young journalist at a very kind of hip new company. When she was younger, her parents died in a very tragic car accident that left her very injured, both emotionally and physically. And around that time when she was in the accident and recovering, she went and stayed with her aunt, and her older sister B left her for good and went off and joined a community/cult, whatever you want to call it. So Lo has been searching for her ever since, trying to find B so that they can reconnect. And all I'll say is that towards the beginning of this book, an opportunity presents itself so that Lo can go ahead and investigate and sort of write an article about this group and its leader Lev, so that she can simultaneously learn about this group and also try and find her sister. So let's go ahead and get into the pros. If, as I was saying that summary, it reminded you a little bit of Sadie, I definitely felt that as well, except for this time, instead of, well, I don't want to accidentally spoil Sadie, it's been a long time since I've read it, but in that situation, it's an older sister dealing with her, you know, kind of, you know what, I'm not even going to try, just go watch my video about Sadie. But all I'll say is both books have to do with sisterhood, and I really enjoy just how Courtney Summers writes about family, especially sibling relationships. There's a scene later on in the book with B, because about 25% of the book is told back in time from B's perspective, where she's really grieving and wishing her mom was there, and I really was on the verge of tears. So I just think in general Courtney Summers does a really excellent job of describing familial relationships. And speaking of this being about 25% from B's perspective, I will say the book really grabbed me at the beginning, present day, with Lo, and then every time it went back in time for a little bit with B, I thought it was dragging a little bit, but by the end of the book, I will say B's point of view was what really kept me invested, and I ended up being a lot more interested and enjoyed B a lot more than I enjoyed Lo. I was reading some reviews on Goodreads, and I saw a lot of people really disliking Lo because they thought she was a little bit of an idiot, you know, to really put it simply. And while there were definitely aspects towards the end of the book that really frustrated me with Lo and felt as if they're a little bit out of nowhere, I will say that I actually appreciated that there was not anything inherently about her character or her sense of self that made her incredibly unique or some type of super skilled genius. She really is just kind of your average 19-year-old who has been through something incredibly horrific. In fact, I would have been really frustrated if she was some type of super genius, or if they made her out to be incredibly special and unique, because that's a trope that really frustrates me that often surrounds protagonists around her age in a lot of books. So those are the pros, and let's go ahead and get into the cons, for which I'll be honest, I do have quite a few. My biggest frustration with this book was definitely the character of Lev, who is the leader of this group. And it's said by this group that he is chosen by God to be, you know, this redeemer. But I think what is really critical with any type of cult book, whether or not they're a good or bad person, that you are really intrigued by their leader. And I think there are really two ways you can do that, and either way would have worked well, and this book doesn't do either. But I think the first way is to make it incredibly realistic. So for example, I really enjoyed, was it just called NXIVM? I can't remember, but that documentary that came out a few months back on HBO, I thought that was so well done, and I thought what was well done about it was that it was so realistic. Of course, because this is true crime, this really happened, but I'm just saying if you were to make a fictional version of that, I think what could be done well is it made the leader incredibly realistic and made everything that happens realistic, so you as the reader can think, oh, I would definitely join this group. I could see this happening to me. Because just as a side note, I remember hearing this somewhere, if you think you're the type of person who wouldn't join a cult, you're exactly the type of person who would join a cult. But anyway, so option number 1 would have been to make this really, really realistic. And then option number 2 would have been, is to still make the leader really interesting and, you know, magnetic, but to just kind of make it over the top. And for that, I think of something like Bad Times at the El Royale, which, as a side note, if you have not seen that, I'm jealous because that means you get to experience it for the first time. I think it's so underrated and so, so good. But this book really does neither. I did not find Lev interesting whatsoever, and because he wasn't interesting or enigmatic, I didn't understand why people would really want to join this group, so it also didn't feel realistic. Anytime Lev started speaking, I was genuinely bored, and I can't fathom how anyone would not have also been bored listening to him. The other issue I had with this book was the pacing. As I said, I was really invested at the beginning, and then my interest in present day actually started to taper off, and I started to be a lot more interested in the flashbacks with Bee's story. And one thing that I do think it's important to know going into this is I think when you picture any type of book like this, what I think you picture going into it is, oh, Lo's gonna go ahead and immediately just be in this group and become really immersed and learn everything that's going on. When in reality, for a good chunk of the book, she is interviewing and learning a lot about this group, but she's also, which is called The Project. I don't know if I ever said that, but it's the title. But for a lot of it, she'll do a day or two of interviews, and then she'll go back to her present day desk job where she's a secretary. And every time it did that, I just thought the book slowed down so much and the pacing just went kind of off the rails. There are also times, and again, won't spoil it, but a really dramatic scene. I'm sure if you've read this, you know what I'm talking about, towards the end. And this happens in present day, is so dramatic, you're wondering, oh my god, what is gonna happen? It just flashes back in time and then flashes forward in time, so you never even actually get to really see this really intense moment. So overall, I just had a lot of issues with the pacing. So overall, if you read and enjoyed Sadie, I think you're gonna enjoy The Project as much as you enjoyed Sadie? No, unfortunately. But I think if you're a huge Courtney Summers fan like me, I would probably still recommend going ahead and picking up the book if, based on what I've said so far, you think you might enjoy it. Even though, again, this is not a 5-star read for me, I think I gave this 3. I'm still glad I read it and enjoyed a good chunk of the book, even if I didn't enjoy 100% of it. If any of you have read The Project, please let me know your thoughts, and if there are any other new releases you want to see me review, feel free to let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.